having nightmares that AI is plotting to replace humans one job at a time? Maybe you've just watched one too many sci-fi movies. Andrea is here to show us that AI doesn't have to be scary. In fact, it might just save us.
Welcome to She Talks Business. In this episode, we have Andrea Prazakova, CEO of Andrea Now, and former SVP at MasterCard. With decades of experience and a seat on the Forbes Technology Council, Andrea is a leading voice in responsible AI, speaking globally on the need for ethical, inclusive, and sustainable technologies. She's passionate about building AI systems that serve people, not profits, and will be diving into her innovative work, from tackling unconscious bias to exploring the role of AI in the space economy.
The book of Elon Musk is there. They've been automating so much for the Tesla production, and then they realized that some of the tasks are better done by humans, so they took out the machines and put humans back.
If you can't beat them, join them.
Google, who just launched an application powered by AI, which is helping you to detect illnesses based on your coughs and so on, right? You take a step back, right, and think about who designs the AI. It's the humans who defined how the future will go, not the algorithms.
Yeah.
When you leave this podcast, ask yourself, do I have this job only because one system cannot speak to the other system?
That's a good one. So, Andrea, from a career in banking to AI, Web3, sustainability, and now I've been reading that you're starting Andrea Now. I am the most curious about this most recent venture of yours. What is it all about?
They say that the first 50 years in your life you do research, and after 50 you start living and doing the right thing. So I am 51, and so I did research for 50 years across these different industries, and now I decided to start my own ventures and my own business. So Andrea Now has multiple facets. It's obviously a lot focused on AI. From I don't want to spill the beans yet, but I'm building a couple of AI applications and working on a program which will empower women. So I found really driven towards. It's actually a sustainability topic if you think about it, right? Because we as female, we're always like a little bit behind in, if you look at statistics, historically, right?
Yeah.
Women were not able to vote and do many, many things, right? Now, but if you look at AI, women are still very underrepresented. About 26% of women are, and quantum is even less, it's like 2% of women are in quantum computing. So what I want to do with Andrea Now is really to build programs which will women like yourself and many others to bring into the world of AI, right? The same is with space, because I think that we often get so focused on what we're doing and we're doing it really well that we forget that we need to get involved in things. And, we might have an excuse to not be involved in blockchain and maybe Web3, but I think for AI, we don't have any excuses. So I think that's my real mission. I want to build solutions with AI technologies, and I want to build programs which will bring women closer to AI. I think that I had a big realization now over the last 12 months. I trained close to 2,000 people in AI, right? And it really dawned on me every single time, professionals who are so great in their jobs that they don't go over and beyond playing a little bit with ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
And women are further down the road from that. And I think it's super critical, especially, you have a daughter, I have 2 sons.
Yeah.
As a woman, as a mother, you have to understand all of this new tech so that you can, manage the time of your kids much better and all of that. So, Andrea Now is really, helping in this point in time and investing into the right AI space and building women in the AI space.
I'll be closely following that one for sure. It sounds very interesting and one that I'm personally super, super interested about. Andrea, I want to talk a bit more about AI and your work in AI. And I saw that you were recently in a conference in Dubai where you were talking about AI, but from a perspective of economic inclusion. And I'm really curious about this, that how does AI come into investment segment and investment side for those people who don't probably understand? Could you explain it a bit more?
Sure. I think that AI is everywhere. If you book yourself a ticket today on holidays, right? There is a recommendation engine which is powered by some algorithm, and you use it already for years. AI is here since 1956, right? We just haven't been seeing it. And you know, in your tablet, in your telephone, there is a lot of different types of AI systems, right? So in terms from an investment perspective, I think maybe let's focus on one aspect so that we don't overwhelm the audience, right? Aspect which I'm super passionate about. So let's say you want to invest into a company, right? If from a traditional manner, you would obviously look at the performance, right? You come from hospitality, so how many guests they have, and you know how much sales, what is the occupancy, what are the ratings, and how much money they make, right? That's in general. Now with AI, it becomes, AI becomes almost pull and push, right? On the pull is you can utilize AI to analyze all the data much better, right? And you can connect other data. For example, you can use satellite data to see what is the frequency and how many guests are using your pools. How many guests are arriving in a car. So you can have many data points which, with the help of AI, and I use AI very loosely because there's multiple different obviously applications of it. You can do full analytics and predictability, right? So you can say, okay, I want to buy this hotel from you, right? If you have a boutique hotel, let's say somewhere on a beautiful island, I can do predictability from a weather perspective, which will give me what occupancy will be. I can analyze, how many people will come. From the people who are coming, I can analyze how many of them are vegan, how many of them eat meat. I can use AI to, predict the whole menu. So now from an investor perspective, you now not only have one view of the potential asset you are buying, but you have multiple different perspectives. Plus it can help you predict what the business will be doing, right? Will this business be impacted by environmental changes or by street building down the road? So that's one aspect where I think AI is really critical. But the other aspect where I am personally really passionate about is, let's say you're doing your job in marketing today, right? And maybe the job you're doing could be completely outsourced into AI in the next 5 years, right? We know that by 2030, there are very many studies, but I will use the number which I think McKinsey published, about 800 million jobs won't be there, right? So if I look at a company I want to invest in, I would say, so if they eliminate Andrea, and they make more profit if they eliminate 1,000 of Andreas, and they make, increase their profit by 10%. What happened to Andrea? So what do you want to use from an AI perspective? Because everybody is now on the hunt to automate and augment, right? Which is wonderful because, AI is super powerful and can make the planet much better and us much better. But it's in the race for capitalism. I think it's a really danger if we don't start to look at and assess company if they use it responsibly. Not only from a data protection and privacy and so on, but also towards the employees. So I think that in that space, it's utilizing AI to analyze where you buy, but also making sure that you put in your scorecard, is this company using the AI responsibly, right? If they replace employees, what are we doing with that? Are they reallocating the profit to upskill them and reskill them and so on?
Yeah. And Andrea, since we've started talking about the future of work with the automation and AI already, could you let me know, what do you think in your view and what you've seen so far, because you speak to industry experts and you write so much about it and you've got experience. How do you see in the future, the jobs that ultimately do need the empathy that a human being has, maybe like caregiving, traditional caregiving jobs? How does AI impact those jobs, for instance, nursing, let's say?
That's a really great question. I think there was recently a study published where 7,000 jobs were evaluated, right? And how many of them will be completely replaced and how many will be like augmented. And I like, but if you think about industrial revolution, in that case, farmers were replaced with tractors, when I put it very easily, right? But in the space of AI, I think a lot of white collar work is being replaced or augmented, right? So I feel that, in nursing, for example, doctors are easily replaced with AI, right? Imagine, my grandfather was wrongly diagnosed, and for 20 years he was told not to take salt, and we know how important is it for your body, right? Because some GP told him. Imagine this GP would have access to, 1 million data points,
right,
of other doctors and patients, which would help him to make much better decision. When you ask yourself, what is the role then of the doctor if you are able then to communicate, if it has a human voice, you don't actually need the doctor, right, to do the diagnosis. Now there are already people being operated on with machines. And ultimately, if you can get a great diagnosis, you don't need the doctor, right? Now you can say, but I might be needing the nurse, right? That's a really interesting question, because everybody said we will need nurses, right? So I want to, be a little bit controversial, right? There is a really famous movie with Scarlett Johansson voice, it's called Her, right? Where a guy, it's Joaquin Phoenix, he plays the male role. He falls in love with the AI, with her voice, and she's very empathetic, right? So the question is, can maybe AI be trained as well to be as empathetic? Might not be able to give you a hug, right? Because maybe one day, right? But theoretically, AI could also replace some of these jobs which require empathy. For example, therapy, right?
Yeah.
Again, if you go to a therapy, if you've ever been to therapy, you are almost on a mercy of one therapist and what his or her practices are, right? Not being fed by multiple different examples and case studies. So why you go there? So because they show a lot of empathy, right? They listen to you, they give you a space to air things and give you some
let
advice.
It all out.
Yes, but ultimately, that whole area can be replaced by AI. So I don't think that any job is really safe. I think that I was reading a book the other day, and I thought that some of the jobs which are probably more safe than others are, for example, artists, right? If you are in a job where somebody will go and pay to go to see you, you're good, right? But ultimately, so I think that's why I'm, study also Andrea Now. I really feel that people underestimate where this is going. I love it. I'm super excited about it. I think can so positively, eliminate hunger and help us with climate change and all of this. But ultimately, is it driven, our system being designed in a way that it's designed responsibly and not only for profit? Do we need to rethink our whole thinking around, how countries and companies operate? And I think that's a really interesting topic to think about. But from a work perspective, when you leave this podcast, ask yourself, do I have this job only because one system cannot speak to the other system, right? Like an assistant if you have a PA, right? Why she does booking, she does your expenses, but the only reason of existence is because these systems can't talk to each other yet. The moment these systems can talk to each other and there is an algorithm, why do you need her? So are you in that position where you won't be needed?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, what will you be doing?
But that's my next question. In a situation where all of this is happening in the world right now, and there's this AI development happening, and there's a scare of, robots will eventually take over our jobs. How do leaders actually navigate this as a challenge? And how do they prepare their teams that, yes, innovation is coming and it might be positive, but on the other side, on the flip side, there's this negativity as well. How do they keep up with the spirit of the team? What can they do for their teams to make sure that they're up to par?
Yeah, I think that is a really, and there is still, long road, right?
Yeah.
If you look, the world is super big and not everybody is obviously UAE, right? UAE is in a very beautiful and privileged position. We all, know that. But if you think about it from a leader perspective, I think you need to start with yourself, right? I think that one of the big mistakes also employees make, that they waiting for the companies to teach them something, right? And I think in this space of AI, it's so critical that every day you put yourself 10-15 minutes in your calendar and you go, there is so much of free education online, right? IBM does fantastic, these 10-20 minutes courses on their website. I mean, they so beautifully done, right? And you just watch it and you educate yourself. And I think it's really, really important that you do that. If you lead a team, you maybe say, okay, guys, and I used to do it with my team, that we go and once a week for half an hour, 45 minutes, we would teach which system we discovered this week. What is it good for, right? And I think that's from an individual perspective. From a company perspective, I think this is super critical. And that goes back to the investment, and it's a question, will the governments and the central banks and the regulatory body force the companies to make sure that people are, first level is just awareness, right? Where did it come from? How does it work? How can it make your life better, easier, more efficient? Then to say, what does it mean for your work itself, right? How will you be augmented, right? What does the impact? Will maybe your job not exist? What will you be doing then in 5 years? How can we work with you on programs? And I don't think that there is enough being done right now. And it really depends. It's a push between private and governmental sector, right? There will need to be some enforcement on that side to say, guys, you need to. I mean, European Union is now working on some legislation which would obviously make sure that companies do upskill mandatory their employees, right?
Okay, interesting. And then since you're mentioning legislations and governance, that's something that's always interested me as well, because with AI and how fast it's going, and then going back to your point that it's very little known, like till now, I think the people who are at decision-making level, it's unless you take a personal interest in it or it's in, you know, the bigger scope of things that you manage, we tend to push it away as like maybe late adopters of technology, let's just say. So in terms of governance, how do you look at it with the ethical side of things, of the bad impacts it could have?
You know, that's a really loaded one, right? I think that governance is incredibly important, right? And I think there are multiple facets of it, right? So it's governance in terms of if you decide to put any systems in place. And there is a lot of players and everybody promises you, oh, we come and we fully automate and do this and do that. I think that first of all, you need to step back and get some real experts in to say, before you even write AI strategy, write a data strategy, right? Understand what data do you currently have. And data doesn't mean only your banking data, but it means your scrolling data, your satellite knows and geolocation knows where you're moving, right? If you, whatever sector are you in, what type of data you have, right? What is the quality? How do you store it? How much of that it's rubbish? How much of it do you keep? How long do you keep it? Does it have any value for another sector? So I think really to get somebody who will assess your state of your data and what type of data will you be collecting in the future, right? And then and because every process you put in place as well, so you look at your data and then you assess your company from a process perspective, right, for automation and augmentation. And I think then you should decide and say, okay, let's write the AI strategy and understand what am I doing. And part of the AI strategy needs to be, you know, privacy and security biases. I think all of these areas inside needs to be, one shouldn't just blindly jump into it and start to automate, because it can have really severe consequences. So it's important to do that. And I think companies, you have almost like three types, right? If I take out the experts, right? So you have the ones which would then jump and who are on the wave, are super excited and want to do very fast and start to augment and automate processes very fast, right? Then the ones which say, you know, we don't really need this because we make enough money. This is not our core business. We don't want to, we just will do some automation, right? And then you have the ones which do it the right way, right? That's, you know, really looking at all the different facets. And it's difficult because there's not so many people, I mean, there are obviously data scientists and so on, but from a business perspective, right, there's still limited amount of AI specialists, data scientists and data experts, right, and data scholars and who will advise you rightly. So it's a little bit of a, you know, I don't want to call it wild west, but I can't find the right word for it. So from a company perspective, I think, you know, there is, I think His Excellency, the Ministry of AI said it in Davos this year, where he said, you know, there is no words in the dictionary which describe the difference between finished and complete, right? And he said that if you embrace AI, you will be complete. If you you know, go late, you will be finished, and if you ignore it, you will be completely finished. And I think that it's a really quote which encompasses all of these aspects to it. There's no perfect plan. It's a new technology. Think about it, how long it took for aviation industry to be regulated and put into place. Decades.
That's true, actually, right? Yes.
Think about other industries which are really modern and how long it took to put the right laws in place and all of it. This is, I mean, even though it's here for so long, in our faces as a consumers, it's for a very short period of time, and everybody's just trying to keep up, right? If it's the companies, the regulators, everybody.
Yeah, that's true. I think also a lot of the credit of a lot of negative bias goes to all these movies that we've seen growing up as well of how the future looks like and what place does, it's always the AI and robots are always shown in a very negative way as well, that ultimately they will take over the humans and we will not have a space on this earth.
I like that you said it, because maybe take a step back, right? And think about who designs the AI.
Humans.
Who designed? So if something like this happened, who is at fault? Not the robot.
Yeah.
Right? Not the algorithm. It's the humans who do it irresponsibly, right?
Yeah.
Who build it in a way which is not controlled, which has biases, is maybe racist, is bias against women, whatever, right? So that's where it's so critical to have a proper governance in place about companies who build the algorithms to make sure that we don't end up in some kind of a sci-fi movie in the future. It's the humans who defined how the future will go, not the algorithms.
Yeah, and I think a lot of negative biases also go away once you see things come into action. I was working for this robotic process automation client from a marketing strategy perspective, and I remember a lot of companies that they were pitching to include RPA processes. There were in the beginning a lot of hindrance from their side and the employees specifically that this is probably going to make us redundant, but on the same side it forces them to come out of their shell, and it actually increased a lot of work-life balance for a lot of them, because come to think of it, it does create time, and it helps humans as well. It's just a way of how you look at it in a perspective.
And it's I think it was a great example of in the book of Elon Musk is there they've been automating so much for the Tesla production, and then they realized that some of the tasks are better done by humans, so they took out the machines and put humans back. So this is a great if you think about human-centered design, human-centered AI, this is what it is, right? You find a collaboration between the human and the machine in this case, where humans have tasks which they can do much better, right? Elon Musk put it into the book, and it's really fascinating to make this decision to say, I automate everything. Then you discover, okay, this part ain't working. So you take the machines out and put back humans, and then you have this collaboration between the human and machine. And I think that's where we want to. We want to be augmented to a level where you get a little bit more time, with our children and have a better quality and obviously better environment and everything else.
So Andrea, I'm going to take you back a little bit just to kind of understand you a bit more on a personal level. How did you start your career from a girl in banking? And I've done my research, so I've listened to your interviews where you've talked about how you were this young girl who went into banking and started working there and learned everything on the job, and you started doing really well and had these breadth of opportunities available to you. But it was still a very traditional time. It was banking, it was hardcore corporate. And then I see that you transformed and you started adopting onto these new skills and new ideas while working for these various job roles that you were. How did you eventually end up in tech from banking, if you don't mind me asking?
I have to correct you, because my official job, according to my parents, was the banking one. Yeah. But obviously after I finished school, I worked as a waitress in a restaurant. And that's how I figured out, I knew about this job in banking, right? So my parents obviously were not super proud of me being a waitress, but before working in a branch, I was just serving tables. And so I think, banking is full of technology, right? And I think my first, when I really discovered the passion, not only to be surrounded and be a user, but be a active participant, was around 1995 was the first time, I'm a bit older than you. So I was deputy branch manager in Český Krumlov, which was the second branch which we opened in Czech Republic. And I like mathematics and I like organization. I'm very structured and it throws me out very easily if something is not organized, and, so a bit of OCD there. So when I was setting up the branch, right, there was a lot of project management. But then I had to learn, because we had only one person in IT. We just, the bank started, it was an Austrian bank, or you just started in Czech Republic. My hometown was first, it was the second branch. One guy. So I started to learn how to set up servers, how to set up computers. I never did anything like that before. Yeah, I had a little bit of computing classes in the school, but nothing like that. And I think that what really fascinated me, was all the logics, right? Because you obviously tech starts with, at that time the server room was slightly bigger, right? where do you put the cables, how do you set up the computer so that then the branch employees can work on it. And that was really good. So I really switched from the position of just being in, coming and switch it on, to understanding how it works. And then 2 years, like a year, 2 years later, because I did such a good job in obviously setting it up, they wanted me to set it up for the entire country, and then I did obviously for Eastern Europe, right? But I was very frustrated that, everything is on paper, and, there are no standards, and, again, it wasn't organized. So I taught myself CorelDRAW, which is another technology used by architects. I don't know if I use it today.
It's obsolete now. It's interesting. Yeah, CorelDRAW is one of the pioneers before Photoshop.
So I probably had Kodak moment. So I taught myself CorelDRAW, and with the interior designer, we created a whole manual with every single piece of furniture was drawn, described. I included then trainings into it, and I published the manual on a CD.
Oh,
right?
how amazing.
Yeah? And then, and my third, a moment where I started to go more into coding was, you might not remember, there was something called Lotus Notes, which was like a predecessor of Outlook. Mm-hmm. So Lotus Notes was, you were able to read messages, but also you were able to program databases. And, I needed reporting from sales numbers from the branches, from my boss. And I was so sick and tired to, putting Excels together and not being able to do it. So I programmed a database, which then took all the reports and created almost like a reporting a depository where you clicked and you would have it from all the branches. And I think it never left me, I think because when we think about technology, it's not just the big stuff, right? Excel is an improvement from paper, right? If you think about 100%. it, you wrote numbers on paper, and then Excel came and, oh my God, it changed our lives, right? So, but I end up so I feel that banks are very technological, right? From core banking system, to, card management system, to CRMs and so on, right? And when I was in Bank ABC in Africa, we've been obviously awarded by Microsoft, the most innovative bank. We started to use, their CRM system for scoring, right? Because I think it gave me a great benefit of not being only the user, but to understand what is happening and what the opportunity and potential is of I'm now speaking too fast because I get so excited, right, when I speak about it. But it's really the curiosity and in my case, curiosity combined with impatience. If I don't know how it works, it really frustrates me, and I want to know how it works, and I want to understand it from the back. And it's in my life till now. I remember, when NFTs came out, then blockchain, and I'm living in a constant stage of FOMO, right? That I don't know something, and it's really, for me, it's really important to have that overview to be able to connect the dots.
That's so interesting. Yes, it's constant learning and it never ends. I keep on saying that about marketing, but now after speaking to you, even, of course, definitely in tech, there's just so much going on, and it's a matter of constantly keeping yourself up to date with everything that's happening. But it's a personal interest still. It's not a requirement of your job, like you're mentioning. I'm sure nobody asked you to do that.
No.
But it was your personal interest to do that because you thought that it could make you do things better in a more, better way. So that's a big lesson right there. And we started talking about the other interesting bits was ESG. So initially when I saw that even in MasterCard, one of your portfolios that you were managing was ESG, which is environmental, social, and educational governance. How does AI actually contribute towards sustainability?
Oh, big time. So I think that it will be a big statement. I think AI can really, I wouldn't say save us, but it can destroy us, it can save us as well. But it is already used in sustainability in massive ways, right? So if you look at the ESG, which is the environment, social, and governance, right? Let's look at the environment, right? It's used in many applications in agriculture, right? Which is precision farming, predictability of weather. So agriculture is already impacted quite a lot, right? Then on the social aspect, you look at Khan Academy. Beautiful example, right? How they embraced AI to personalize education. The democratization from a sustainability perspective, it's incredible. Where children couldn't get to school. Now, if a telco provides them with a device, they could have access. A tutor. We both have children, so if the education piece is, I think, really, really super powerful, right? So AI today is already embedded big time in the sustainability space, in the E space, in the S space, healthcare, which covers obviously. If you look at the 17 sustainability goals, you can find a solution for each of them which already is existing. We're just not aware of it. Or maybe we didn't know that the technology is powering it, right?
I think you're right that we're probably not aware of it. That's such a strong point because we're using that. For instance, in my daughter's curriculum, I see that, for instance, they're on Century Tech, which is AI powered as well. So she gets to work more on things that she needs to work on. Or like in hospitality, I was remembering just now as you were speaking, we had a program where we could actually calculate the waste that was produced after the food waste that was produced after a buffet.
Yes.
And the chefs could actually calculate for next buffet for how many people, as per they've checked in, how much food do they need to prepare or groceries they need to order for that. So it's there already. I think we're just slowly, maybe we're not giving it due credit.
Yes, no, and we're surrounded by it, every day. And I think that, when you talk about artificial intelligence, many people just think, and I hear, in panels, they just say, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is just the generative AI and it's product of one of the giants, right? There is many different applications, right? There is obviously, so you have the machine learning, right? Then you have deep learning with neural networks, then you have generative AI. So there is multiple different layers and they are, used in a different format, right? I found it super powerful, for example, utilization of space data with AI for predictability. I think that, for, as I said, for farming, it's massive. Like maybe 600 million small-scale farmers. Imagine the democratization of it, how it will help them. Not only farm properly, water properly, put the right pesticides, right? But also could tell them where can they sell better. Where maybe in this village it's it's enough potatoes, but the next one has shortage. You can go there and sell it maybe for a higher price, right? So there's a lot which we are already surrounded by. I think that it's not that it came now. It's in your, maybe after this podcast, when just take a minute and look at your house, what you're doing, and look at what you do during the day, and think what is already powered by some kind of algorithm. It could be only machine learning, right? Which decides which light goes on the next traffic light.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's everywhere.
When you fly airplanes, airplanes controllers and all of these, right? So you will have, because not everything is generative, and I think that's where the misconception is, that people think that it's needs to be the generating ideas or giving you answers, right? The rule base is machine learning, right?
Interesting. And which segment do you think in between the ESG is your favorite? If you could give an example of something that you've seen recently been doing in a particular segment.
Okay. I have many. It's very hard. But I did a course in AI at MIT Professional, and the MIT lab, we did like a homework on a project where the AI was able to would be able to diagnose if you have COVID out of coughing into a telephone, right?
Interesting.
And the second application was that it would detect the high early stage of dementia, right? Based on your speech and how it interacts. A couple of weeks back, it must be 2-3 weeks, I believe it's Google, who just launched an application powered by AI, which is helping you to detect illnesses based on your coughs and so on, right? The impact on healthcare, it's so beautiful. It's so significant. My dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when he was 70. He's 80 now. He's doing very well. But imagine at that point in time, how some of these new technologies and biotech, which is obviously powered with AI, can help them. I'm very excited about seeing something at school being talked about and then seeing it in real life. And that's just one example. We could go for hours about, some of these aspects. But I think healthcare, it's really, I'm super excited about healthcare.
Super interesting. Yeah, healthcare and longevity. Maybe it's gonna,
100%, because it's a tricky road a little bit, right? It can be misused, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm such an optimist, I would be happily giving, obviously, tokenized data, right? Not, but I would happily give if you pay me for it as an insurance, I will give you all my data, right? My data from my Aura ring and whatever, right? Well, you know, and then you may give me a discount on my policy because I am, you know, doing all the things right. I eat the right thing, I exercise, and, you know, my age, my body age is actually less than I am on my birth certificate, right? You could help me to diagnose the moment. I would happily put a chip in myself. If the chip would be able to diagnose from my blood early detection of cancer, for example, right? Or some, you know, so there is great advances, but it has the great risk, and it goes back to the governance and responsible usage of AI, right? Because you could punish people as well if you don't use the, you know, you don't use the data. I mean, in HR, for example, right? If you completely outsource grading and bonuses and so on to algorithms, if the algorithms are not taking under consideration what, for example, happened in your life this year, and you don't have that piece inside, and obviously it's just kind of machine learning without, you know, it's very dangerous, right? So there is always the danger, and there is always a great upside. So that's hence the governance and the, you know, legislation. It's so critical, and having people on the top who are not only profit driven, who really think about all these systems from
Ethics
a human perspective.
100%. I think that's key.
But we living in.
We're gonna live longer. We're gonna live longer, have a good skin, longevity, never die. Ultimately, maybe that's what's going to happen as well.
I'm not sure I would like that. There is a famous book by Amy Webb, which is called The Genesis Machine, and she obviously places scenarios where, you know, what will happen to us. I think there are 7 scenarios, if I remember correctly. With us, and I think there is one chapter which really made me laugh. Where I think the junior clerk in a branch is like 60 and the senior is 80, you know? So we need to think what we wish for, right? Let's imagine my grandmother is turning 101 in 2 months. So let's imagine I would live till 140. How will I survive? What salary will I mean, what will happen to somebody who's 40 and I'm still 140 in a job? What jobs will they have? You know, I think that there is a lot of thinking we need to consider about society. And of course, it will not happen so fast, and because, you know, there is big discrepancies, right? There is still very poor nations. There are a lot of nations at war as we speak right now. So, but these are the things which need to be considered for the future.
And perhaps new economies, which brings me to the next question that I have is about Web3. You've done a lot of work in Web3, and I feel like in a lot of ways it's still a buzzword. Not a lot of people completely understand, and I'll be completely honest with you. I kind of know what it is, but I'm not sure what is Web3.
Yeah, so if you think about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, right? So Web 1 is just like writing email, if you think about it. Web 2 is you would go on Google and you would look for something, and Web 3 is where you can interact with it, right? And I think many people have a misconception that Web3 is metaverse, right? I think that's so today you can fully interact in the environment, right? You can create things, so it's not passive anymore, right? It's proactive. It's proactively engaging with you. And then obviously Web 4 is almost like a predictability. That's where it's fully powered by AI, right? I don't know what Web 5 will be then. Don't know. I need to Google it. Maybe we ask AI what Web 5 will be. So if you, and obviously gaming helped it a lot, right? Because if you think any game, it's in a Web3 environment because you interact with the game itself, right? That's why it's so big. I mean, the gaming industry is, I think this year it will close on $230 billion in comparison to entertainment, which is, I believe, about $80 billion, right? So think about how big it is. So, what I like about the opportunity of Web3, it's the virtual economy, right? That now you can not only read and consume, but you can create inside, right? You can create experiences inside the Web3. I mean, you can have your own brand, you can have your own store, you can have your own library, you can have your own shop, you can have whatever you want. You can interact in the
So that's another stream of creator economy. That's
yes, definitely
a byproduct of
100%. I think that's if you think about it, everything which is happening in Web3, you actually, what you're doing today, you need experience designers, you need marketers, you need, product developers, you need the jobs which you do in a physical world, you can transform and put it into Web3.
You're a mom of 2 beautiful kids. And I've seen that it's becoming increasingly difficult with AI, because we were talking about AI and children, how in parenting it has created a lot of challenges for us. And I'm sure you're probably well ahead of than most of us. You probably even know what they're doing on Roblox, and, you know, because I can see that in you. But generally, it's just becoming very difficult for parents to keep up with the tech and AI. So what do you think? Like, where do we draw a line, and how do we kind of navigate these challenges that are coming up, which our parents never had to face, with the improved tech and then AI and then kids in this whole scenario?
You know, this is a really topic close to my heart, right? And if I think about it, it's not only AI, right? All the technologies, right? It's I mentioned NFTs. My oldest son published his first NFTs when he was 9. And it's out of, you know, he came home and said, "Mommy, how does NFT work?" I said, first I wanted to go immediately like a blubber out, right? And then I said, you know what, if you do one, publish it, I buy it, which forced him to learn to technology, right? When the AI obviously became so up and hype last year in October, I instead of sending them to a camp during the holidays, they had the whole week a private tutor on AI. Of course, they hated me because all their friends did something else, not learning, right? They always use the phrase, I'm sure your daughter does it the same, everybody else but us, right? So they went, after the first day, they were so excited. By end of a week, they both created prototypes. They've been testing the ideas with the synthetic users. They learned multiple different AI systems. And, you know, I think they don't need to be specialists, right? But I think it's so critical that my children understand how the technologies operate, how blockchain operates. And you know, doesn't mean that they will have a career. My oldest son wants to be astrophysicist, right? But he needs to understand, you know, all of these pieces. And I think for parents, I was speaking on a conference in South Africa in June. And my topic was Web3, right? And I was talking about, right, how Roblox actually has every day, I think by now, at that time they had 77 million active daily users, right? And how gaming is a career, that you have developers, managers, designers, gamers, you know, but I was giving an example of the gentleman who created a studio here in Abu Dhabi, which is called Votable. His name is Zain. He started to sell skins when he was 11. And he sold 30 million skins on Roblox, right? And many parents came afterwards to me and said, "Oh, I didn't know. I don't want my kid to play Roblox," right? I said, "Yeah, but you know, there are multiple different games, right? You can switch maybe to Roblox Studio. You can get them coding lessons to know how to code in Roblox, and they can hone their skills, not only to be the consumers, but create. They don't need to become the next Zain, but they can learn something." So I think that one critical piece is that for the parents to educate themselves. Start with yourself, right? If you don't use the AI, start to use it so that you understand what the benefits are. And maybe, you know, I was driving with my youngest son the other day, and we created a whole new Transformer movie by talking to ChatGPT. Yeah. So make it. I have colleagues who write bedtime stories for the kids with AI, right? So embrace it yourself to understand, and then manage it responsibly, right? But don't take it away from the children. I think you're making a disservice, right? Now, how to manage screen time? I think that's, until last year, I thought that it was my strongest currency at home because of this screen time. Now my oldest son needs obviously much more access to computer because he's 14 for school, and I struggle with it as well, right? So I decided to take it from a different perspective now. So until last year, I would have a code, and there was hard negotiations if you would go on the computer more than 1 hour and so on. So it was like my only lever, right? I'm sure you have the same, right? So now, and I think that what I want to focus on is to create the other opportunities which will take them away, right? So, and I am privileged enough. I know I'm sitting here and speaking of position of privilege, right? Many parents have 2 jobs, not 1 job. Many parents struggle to put food on the table. So now, if I look at it from people in my position, you know, then my kids have coding, they have a guitar, drums, French, Japanese, tennis. So balance it out, right? Because unfortunately here in Dubai, it's not like where I grew up in Europe, where you can just go put your back into the corner and go outside and play, right? So I think that as a parent, don't be threatened by it, embrace it, and compensate it with other activities with the child, which will take the child away, right? Make a barter system, right? If he gets his, then you can, if you play tennis, you maybe get 30 minutes, right? So I think because it's so important to them but I think to embrace it is super critical. And I'm now negotiating actually with my older son, because I organize an internship for him in an AI company, and he's so trying to convince me to go and do an internship into something else, right? He wants to do an internship in space, right? So this is a fantastic discussion to have with a 14-year-old, right? And I think that for parents who are not so privileged, like I am, in terms of where they live and what they earn, and because they are not. I know that I'm just sitting just here, a small percentage of people. I think it's use some of your time to understand what it do, right? Gaming is a great example. Gaming teaches kids strategy, teaches them multiple different things. So are there things which they can do, which will hone their skills and turn them from being only consumers and doing something else, right? And but don't outsource your children to a technology. I think we see that a lot. It's a very convenient nanny, right? And often I'm so happy just to give them something to watch, because they say, oh my God, just watch a movie, right? Just watch a movie
5
because
minutes of peace,
it's 5 minutes of peace, but it shouldn't become a habit where it's just the screen and them, right?
And sort of just taking an interest as well, I think, in their life and what they're doing. If you can't beat them, join them.
Exactly. Exactly. I was trying to play Minecraft with my son, and I failed miserably. I'm horrible in gaming. I mean, I have a lot of interest in it, but I'm horrible.
Complete world inside.
My motoric skills are just not, and that's really interesting fact, right? Is that I didn't grow up in. I grew up in obviously communist Czech Republic. We didn't have any games, and my motoric skills are just not ready for it, And he was saying, "Oh, mommy, you don't need to, because you can either stay behind the character or you can be in the character, like in many games, right?" I struggle so badly, but just the fact that I want to learn from him, it's massive change. I mean, when they did the AI course, and I was already so involved in AI, the teacher introduced them to a synthetic user, which then afterwards I started to use in testing on all my concepts, right? That they've been so proud that they can teach me something. It's learn with the children. Let them teach you something. I think that's
it's a great bonding time as well. They feel good about it.
I don't think there is a really right answer. I think that we, as a parents, we try to balance. We have so many other responsibilities, but just don't outsource it, right? I think there are two these extremes, right? You completely say you can't, right? And then
there's a disadvantage there as well.
You disadvantage them, right? Or you can do whatever you want, right? So I think that everybody needs to find their own way, right? Just not ignoring it.
As with parenting, you're completely right. There's no right answer for it.
Yes, exactly. What works for me might not work for you or for the gentlemen who are helping us here today.
Shout out to Emirates Podcast Studio.
Exactly. Thank you.
I just want to bring the conversation back to AI because I think there's one thing that I really wanted to ask you. I see that you've been doing a podcast as well. And I see this word recurring in a lot of your LinkedIn posts as well. And when you talk about your podcast, which is space, AI and space, how are these two intertwined and what work are you doing in this?
Yeah, so it's called Space Uncensored, and it took me quite a while to, put it up. And originally I thought it would be only space, but I decided space and AI. I already recorded now 6 or 7 episodes, which are in post-production. I just want to give voice to women in space and AI. I mean, similarly, like I wasn't in AI, I wasn't in space. 3 years ago, I wasn't in space. But I was curious. I was on a call with a colleague of mine. Her name is Ina Vanka, and she's a space specialist. And they did some work with University of New York around what experiences people will have when they travel to space. And I called her up after. I said, this is so fascinating. I never thought about space in that perspective. And she brought me in. And I decided to do a course, New Space Economy at MIT, and then I just fall in love with it because it's such an incredible sector and an industry which, we don't look at. So I thought there are probably many people like me who have no idea. And there are many women who work in space. So I interviewed a future astronaut, a doctor which does experimentation in lower orbit with nanotechnologies for medicine, and many others. And so the purpose of the Space Uncensored is really to bring these female voices. I want to really support female voices who work in space, in these different areas of space, and women who work in AI, to have a platform to speak to other women and men, and break it down, make it, democratize it a little bit. There are a lot of podcasts already. I want to focus on these, so I'm really excited about it. And I'm also part of two ventures. One is called Stardust and Spaceverse. So one is a company in US, one is a company in Canada. And Spaceverse they are now onboarding over 100 space agencies across the globe, and they will obviously be a platform where you can learn everything about space, from music to movies to merchandise, whatever it is. And Stardust is really about educating the public about what opportunities you have in space, right? Because ultimately, same like in gaming, you need chefs, designers, product developers. It's an industry on its own. It's not, and obviously with a shift from government-driven space exploration to private with Blue Origin and SpaceX, so there was a big shift in that. I think Citi was predicting that it's $1.3 trillion industry, which I think is still underestimated. I think potentially is much bigger. So that's why, got into, again, because I was curious, I think that you are on these roads every day of your life. When you hear something and you can ignore it and you say, let me dig a little bit deeper. Let me see if it's something which would ignite this fire in you to be more curious, right? And yes, and there are some incredible women who do some amazing work in the space economy. It's just, I am just humbled by the fact that, they agree to spend an hour with me and talk with me on Zoom, and this is online because they are all over the space place. And
it's super interesting. And when you say space economy, what do you mean? Like, is this investing in space? Because we keep on hearing these news about billionaires being interested to buy a piece of land in space. Or
so first, obviously, there are obviously multiple different areas, but let me touch on some, right? So you have space travel, right? So there are companies, which is actually part of a co-founder is a female, it's a husband and wife. It's called Space Perspective, which brings people into low orbit in a capsule. So space travel, space exploration, right? So you obviously want to go and find minerals in the other planets, which will help us with sustainability on our planet, right? Then if you think about low orbit, and the microgravity, that's a great area where people are investing, especially from a healthcare perspective, because everything works faster. You can do drug development faster, right? So it's from exploration to travel to utilizing of satellite data, satellite imagery. There is multiple different sectors, right? So touches on healthcare, touches on education, touches on, your day-to-day life, right? Sustainability is a big part of it. And obviously when it's investments, right? But of course, as it grows, it's interesting how we as humans, we don't learn, right? Because now if you go into an orbit of space orbit, there's already a lot of debris, right? Which is a fancy word for rubbish, right? Flying around, because obviously, some of the old machinery, whatever it's lost, left in space. And that's another area where the space agencies and the governments need to work together to put the appropriate laws, so that how we destroying planet Earth, we don't destroy the outside as well. So it's another area just to, I think, and I'm flabbergasted that that's not a topic, for example, in a curriculum, right? Because it's that's the future, right? How will we explore it? How will we travel? How will we utilize it? And yes, there are some astronomy courses and things like that, but there is not sufficient. And that's where Stardust, which is headed by Jason, you know, that's what they want to do. They really want to bring this to schools and to governments, you know, which are, I mean, UAE is a great example. UAE has a fantastic space agenda, right? They have a UAE first female astronaut as well, right? And but not all the countries are like that, right? So,
and then it's also connected even with the sustainability. I've seen that you've written somewhere that sustainability is a luxury. That's what you believe. So even with this space science as well, I feel like, you know, it's only perhaps a luxury for a few at the moment.
Oh, 100%, yes. I think that sustainability itself is a luxury, right? I mean, take your day-to-day example, like, you know, it's we talked about it before we started the podcast, right? How food is modified today and how you want to buy healthier chicken. Chicken is a great example. I hope nobody, you know, who produces chicken will switch off probably now the podcast. So, and you see these horror stories about, you know, how they pump with hormones and they, in these cages, you know, growing 3 times the speed, right? So you want to buy a healthy chicken for your child. But if you go to the shop, so you have a choice between 100 dirhams or 150 dirhams, which is what, $30, $40 to $10, 30 dirhams, right? Not everybody can afford it, right? Not everybody can afford to buy clothes which are made with synthetic silkworms, right? So you go to Zara and buy a t-shirt, or you buy from an incredible brand which is also led by a woman by the name Vanessa Halik, which is called Another Tomorrow, which is fully sustainable, which maps the entire journey, uses you know, synthetic silkworms, and but who can afford it? Who can afford and choose a flight to fly from one place to another in a more carbon friendly flight if a flight ticket is twice the price? So, you know, as much as, and I think there is a massive role, you know, of legislation and regulation and subsidies which needs to happen for businesses, and rethink the consumerism, right? I made myself a promise this year that I will buy as little clothes as possible, and I was very good. I only bought two pieces of clothes, 2 dresses, and it's September, so I'm like, well done, right?
It's little choices,
it's
right?
horrible, right? When you think about it, right? But because do you need so much, really, right? Do you need so much? And it's so driven by profits, right? It's so it's really interesting, but I feel it's a luxury. We talk about it. We buy, you know, bio-vegetable, organic vegetables, organic chickens, organic this. You pay the premium, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Anything that doesn't have sugar is more expensive as well. Anything that is more natural is expensive. So
yes, exactly. And then we wonder, why do we have problem with obesity, you know, depression, and all of these things, right? Because it's all super connected together. What you put into your mouth, it's visible on your body.
Yeah. Andrea, thank you so much. So far, it's been an interesting conversation. But since now that you mentioned what we're putting into our bodies, what we're eating, and how it's acting, and how we are behaving as a human, connecting it back to the wider discussion that we had around AI, I just want to ask you, again, we talked about longevity as well. We talked about what humans can do, cannot do. But with longevity and AI, it makes sense. But when it's about longevity and how your mental health is and how you're taking care of your body, what you're eating, how do you think about that? And as a person, because you've got so much of information and knowledge about it already, what are you doing to make sure that you're ahead of the game by taking care of yourself?
I think this is a really lovely question. Thank you so much. I think, you know, I have to first say that I was not always as responsible with my body. I think I was misusing it so badly, right? And with my mind, right? I think that lack of information and lack of education in the space. I mean, when I grew up, school didn't teach us anything in that area. And I feel that longevity is not just your physical, that you will live till 100 or 120, whatever. But it's a combination of your mind, obviously, in terms of your education, and how do you train this muscle in your head, right? Do you read every day, or listen to an audio book, or a podcast? Do you know, learn something for 15 minutes? How do you train the muscle here? When it's the muscles on your body, which obviously help you to, I mean, as a woman, obviously, as you age, we unfortunately don't age as good as men. So we have to exercise more for bone density and everything else. And then it's your soul, right? I only started to meditation after I read. I was always a little bit against it, right? I've always thought it's a little bit boho, you know, to meditate. I have to admit that. I was just thinking, oh my God, you know, somebody's meditating. I was just rolling my eyes, you know. And person who got me meditated was Arnold Schwarzenegger, believe it or not. I never met him, but I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, right? I think his the book Tools of Titans, I think I read it 4 times and I adopted so many techniques. It really changed my life and view on longevity. When I think about it now, after you ask me, that book changed my life.
Tools of
Titans by Tim Ferriss. So he has obviously a very famous podcast, and the book summarizes these habits of these super successful people, right? And Arnold Schwarzenegger does the foreword, and he has also a chapter, and he talks about how transcendental meditation changed his life. So I said, if Arnold does it,
that's
such a follower, right? Let me try. So I did the course, and it's incredible. So I feel that longevity is really to look at yourself and first start to put yourself first. I think I never did that before. I didn't do it enough. As a woman, especially, you always try to accommodate others and you put yourself last, and really think about these 3. How do you ensure that the muscle in your brain is trained, that you are sharp and on, you are with the trends and you read and, you can participate in a discussion, that you take care of your body so that it carries you as long as possible, right? And then you care of your soul. So your mind, your soul happiness, right? And it could be with breath work, Wim Hof techniques or transcendental meditation, whatever. There are multiple different ways to do it. So I think the only thing which I wish today, if I had a time machine, I wish I would have done it earlier in my life. Yeah. I think that, I went through depression and then I think it was actually Tim Ferriss as well. I should start to pay him something. He was on a podcast with I think Andrew Huberman or Alex Friedman, and he talked about a book which is called Brain Energy. And the Brain Energy book unpacks the connectivity of your mitochondria in your brain and connection to the sugar and how it impacts your depression. And I think all of these things together, I wish I knew a little bit earlier. But I'm trying to catch up. I said I did the 50 years of research. Now I am start living, so I still have at least 50 years to go. So I'm doing my best to.
You're doing phenomenally well.
To feed these 3 pillars in my life, right? That's what the longevity means for me, right? And with that comes happiness, right? I think that, and I come from Eastern Europe. We generally grumpy, right? To my fellow Czechs, but we are not super, always enthusiastic and positive, right? So it takes a lot of convincing my own, cultural biases almost as well, to change and to look at everything positively and not to be suspicious about everything and not to say no to everything, so it's a training. I'm my own project. If I think about it, I'm my own biggest project.
Wow.
I think that's
really deep.
It's a good statement actually.
It's a good
when
statement.
I think about it now, so
this should be the headline of our
I'm
episode.
my own biggest project.
Note to the editors.
Yes.
I love that. No, Andrea, it's been super, super nice to have you here. And you were talking about, all of this, and I can assure you that when you walked into the room, you had this big energy, and it's a good energy, and I can feel it. And I'm so glad that you came on the show and you made us aware of all these new emerging technologies, AI, Web3. It was such a profound discussion. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
If you found this episode interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.